Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spaghetti Westerns podcast. I'm Tom Betts, your host. This is season 6, episode 5, number 118 overall. Today we've got a couple of stinkers, but we got to cover the good, the bad, and the ugly. As far as the history of the Spaghetti Westerns, I'm going to talk about 7 hours of gunfire. Whatever became of, we're going to talk about Brad Harris. Who are those guys? The Peverello brothers. And if you don't know who they are by name, you'll know who they are by facial recognition. They've been in a ton of spaghetti westerns. Uh, Film of the week is Alive or Preferably Dead. Uh, I've got an autograph of the week. I've got a book of the week. Got a bunch of posters. CD of the week is Alive or Preferably Dead. And then we'll wrap things up with the news of the week, which is really no news, but a couple of catch up things from last week. Okay? So let's get started. We're going to talk about history of the spaghetti westerns and 7 hours of gunfire. Okay, 7 hours of gunfire. This is a 1965 Spanish, Italian, German co-production. It's directed by Jose Hernandez, which in reality is Joaquin Luis Romero Marchant. They were very active in the early spaghetti westerns because of the Spanish locations that they were filmed in. The story is actually a book, Buffalo Bill Su a Polka by Angel or Angel del Zavala. Screenplay is by Jose Romero Marchant and Pino Paslacqua and Werner Ebert. Cinematography is by Raf Pacher, Pacher. In reality, that's Rafael Pacheco. It's an Eastman Color and Techniscope. Music is by John Cashel, which is Angelo Francesco Lavagnino in disguise, and Fred Strittmatter. Again, when they have these two names under the musical scores, I don't know if they use them for tax reasons or if they actually had two different scores. Angelo Francesco Lavagnino, of course, would be the Italian release, and Fred Strittmatter would be the German release. Thank God the running time on this one is only 76 minutes. And the cast consists of Bill Hogan, or Buffalo Bill Cody, who's played by Clyde Rogers, and we'll get into who Clyde Rogers is under the bios. Gun Barrett, or Bill Hickok, was played by Adrian Hoven. August St. James, or Mai, was played by Gert Crosskruth. Cora, or Ethel Lieberman, was played by Helga Sommerfeld. Guillermo, or William, was played by Ralph Baldassar. Pastor Norman Lieberman was played by Francisco Sanz. And Calamity Jane, or Juanita, was played by Gloria Milan. A couple of other names that you'll recognize in the cast are Frank North was played by Mariano Vidal Molina. Charlie was played by Lorenzo Robledo. Steve was played by Chris Huerta. Utter, or Charlie Utter, played by Alvaro de Luna. Mr. Cody, in the beginning, was played by Rufino Ingles. Ted was played by Robert Johnson Jr., and that's an alias for Carlos Romero Marchant. And the messenger in the picture was actually played by the director, Joaquin Luis Romero Marchant. Okay? Story goes, as a young Bill Cody, known as Buffalo Bill, played by Clyde Rogers, was a writer of the Pony Express. We now find him as an adult as the head of a caravan of pioneers, among which is Ethel, played by Helga Sommerfeld, a beautiful girl, and her pastor uncle, Francisco Sanz. Upon reaching its destination, Buffalo Bill is made aware by a friend that there is a group of smugglers trafficking in weapons who are regularly supplying the Indians. The weapons are sent and distributed regularly in the city of Custer and is led by three criminals. The fight against the smugglers begins immediately with excellent results. In the city, Buffalo Bill again meets Ethel, who miraculously escapes death during an attack by the Redskins. The Indians are planning another attack, and the town of Custer is soon evacuated so as to seem deserted. But in fact, the regular army, headed by Buffalo Bill, is well hidden in its buildings. Their cause is aided by the intervention of Wild Bill Hickok, played by Adrian Hovan, and Calamity Jane, played by Gloria Milland. The Indians are defeated, and the smugglers Antonio Molina Rojo, Alvaro de Luna, and Lorenzo Robledo are permanently removed. In theme, and the way this plays out, it's similar to last week's covered Charge of the Seventh, where the Indians are defeated by tricking them into thinking the town of Custer is deserted and they would have no trouble destroying it. Rick Van Nutter, using the alias Clyde Rogers, why did he use the alias? Maybe because of his success as Felix Leiter in the James Bond film Thunderball, didn't want to tarnish his newfound fame by being in a spaghetti western, and had the producers change his name. This is just a guess. Here we see a gathering of historical figures, Buffalo Bill, Wild Bill Hickok, Red Cloud, and Calamity Jane, in a fictional adventure, something that was used all the time to attract a larger audience. Reality played no part in these films. Van Nutter comes across as stoic, and I don't believe he ever cracks a smile the entire film, which makes him come across not very warmly to the audience. Hovan's Hickok is portrayed as an alcoholic and joker who really doesn't get involved in the situation. He eventually dies at the end. None of his expert marksmanship is demonstrated or used to any advantage in the film. Meanwhile, Milland's Calamity Jane is portrayed as dumbstruck in love with Wild Bill and his very marginal character. Once you see this, dig the technical die-cast teepees. It's nice to see Ralph Balthazar in an unusual role as a good Indian. These are some excellently staged shootouts, Indian attacks, and the ever-present barroom brawls. They don't make up for the poor characterization of the main characters. This is an average Western at best in the American style, and surely not one of Joaquin Luis Romero Marchand's best efforts. It's available on German DVD, but it's in German language only. Okay? As far as actor profiles go, Bill Hogan, or Buffalo Bill Cody, was played by Clyde Rogers. Like I said, this is Rick Van Nutter. He was born Frederick Allen Nutter on May 1st, 1929 in Pomona, California. A lot of sources say he was born in Germany or Holland, but that's incorrect. He is best remembered for his role as CIA operative Felix Leiter in the 1965 James Bond film Thunderball, starring Sean Connery. He was also a screenwriter for the film Casting Call in 1971. Van Nutter, who is married to actress Anita Ekberg, she was born in 31 and died in 2015. They were married from 63 to 75. He then married Emily Frankel from 88 to 93. He retired from acting in 1979 and died from a heart attack in West Palm Beach, Florida on October 15, 2005. He was 76. Van Nutter also starred in one other spaghetti western, Dynamite Joe, in 1968 as John or Joe Dynamite Ford. Then we have Gun Barrett, or Bill Hickok, played by Adrian Hovan. Adrian Hovan was born Wilhelm Arpad Peter Hofkirchner on May 18, 1922 in Wallersdorf, Lower Austria. He earned a degree in mechanical engineering, and in World War II, he was trained as an aircraft technician and pilot at Messerschmitt, later serving as a paratrooper. He was severely wounded in North Africa and began his acting career as an extra in a 1943 war film. Excuse me. This prompted him to study drama in Berlin in 1945. He briefly acted on stage before concentrating almost exclusively on film work. In 1965, he co-founded Aqua Film with producer Pierre Comaneci. The following year, he wrote, produced, and directed his first film, the psychological thriller, The Killer with the Silk Scarf. Hovan developed a reputation as a successful horror and erotic melodrama film director on the strength of films like The Long Swift Sword of Siegfried and Sadist Erotica. Hovan also appeared in several Rainer Werner Fassbinder's films, most notably in Fear of Fear. During the late 60s and early 70s, he produced classic horror films like Jess Franco's hallucinatory Succubus and the witch hunter thriller Mark of the Devil. Hovind often used the pseudonym Percy Parker when writing and directing his own work. Hovind appeared in one spaghetti western other than this one, The Son of Jesse James in '64, playing the role of Sheriff Alan Davies or Davis. He died from a heart attack on April 8, 1981 in Tegernsee, Bavaria, Germany at the age of 58. Then we have Cora or Ethel Lieberman, played by Helga Sommerfeld. Helga Sommerfeld was born in Dresden, Germany on March 5, 1941. She was a theater, film, and TV actress and began an apprenticeship at the UFA Film and Acting School and made her first appearances in music and Homeland films during her acting training, such as Wenn die Connie mit dem Peter and Schlagerkeiten Festival of Hearts in the 1960s. Sommerfeld appeared mainly in spy and adventure films and occasionally in comedies and pop films. In total, she appeared in 35 movies. She appeared on the big screen for the last time as a leading actress as Linda in the film Der Callboy, or The Gigolo in English, in 1985. Retiring from cinema, she died in Berlin on September 28, 1991 at the age of 50. Helga appeared in one other Euro-Western as Cora Morton in '65's Black Eagle of Santa Fe, starring Brad Harris. Pastor Norman Lieberman was played by Francisco Sanz. Francisco Mateo Sanz was born in Spain in 1921. Apparently, he was not a well-known actor in Spain. Somehow he did not look like someone you would address as Paco. But as Paco Sanz, he was most frequently billed. This bearded, slightly built Spaniard appears to have died in the early 2000s. He was an actor's actor and was usually called upon to play respectable characters in Western towns such as doctors and judges. Looking less groomed, he could play rougher types and was occasionally seen under heavy makeup playing Western old-timers. He appeared in many Spanish TV shows and a great deal of videotaped TV versions of theater plays. Sometimes he was his own dubber on the Spanish soundtracks of his films. He also lent his voice to other actors towards the end of his life. Sanz appeared in 22 spaghetti westerns. It's a shame nothing is really known about the guy. Calamity Jane, or Juanita, was played by Gloria Milland. Born Maria Fai in Cagliari, Sardinia, Italy on October 11, 1940, she appeared in 10 spaghetti westerns and died of cancer in Ladispoli, Rome, Italy on August 27, 1989 at the age of 58. We covered her in depth in episode number 106. Guillermo, or William, is played by Rafael Baldassar, was born in Guardignaio, Lecce, Italy on January 17, 1932, and died on his birthday in Rome in 1995. Sometimes credited as Ralph Baldwin, he appeared in 43 spaghetti westerns. We covered him in depth in episode number 35 and again in number 81. Okay, let's move along to whatever became of, and that's Brad Harris. Okay, Bradford Jan Harris was born in St. Anthony, Idaho on July 16, 1933. His family moved to Los Angeles, California, and Brad attended Burbank High School. He received a football scholarship to UCLA, where he majored in economics. After injuring his knee, he was advised to take up weightlifting to strengthen the injury, and this is where he developed his interest in bodybuilding. Being in LA, he began to appear in films as first a stand-in and then a stuntman and later an actor. His first credited film was in 1956's The McConnell Story, directed by Gordon Douglas and starred Alan Ladd and June Allison. Harris traveled to Rome to watch the 1960 Summer Olympics and there performed stunts in Stanley Kubrick's Spartacus. He stayed in Europe for the boom in European sword and sandal films, Euro Spy, and spaghetti westerns. Brad appeared in 7 spaghetti westerns. Harris made his debut as a leading man in 1961 in the title role of Gianfranco Parolini's Goliath Against the Giants in Samson. He would have a long, continuing relationship in several films written and directed by Parolini. Harris appeared in Pirates of the Mississippi and its sequel Black Eagle of Santa Fe. He married actress Olga Shoborova, who appeared with him in the latter film. The pair were married from 1967 to 1969, and they had a daughter, Sabrina, nicknamed Babrinka, who would become a costume designer. With his 2 German westerns, he had developed a friendship with actor Tony Kendall, and the pair would make a series of Commissar X action films in the late 1960s. Harris also discovered when working in Germany that stunt coordinators were non-existent in that country, and he often did extra duties as a stuntman, stunt coordinator, and second unit director, as well as an actor. Harris formed his own production company called Three Stars Inc. Productions and served as an executive producer on several of his films, including King of Kong Island, which he also starred in, and Jack Cardiff's The Mutations. He later made several appearances on the American soap opera Falcon Crest as Deputy Duffy. His last film was as the captain in 2012's Shiver. Harris invented and marketed exercise products called Ab Originals. He owned a company called Modern Body Design. In 2015, he was awarded the University of Arizona College of Humanities Distinguished Lifetime Achievement Award in the Humanities. Harris was inducted into the Hollywood Stuntman Hall of Fame on January 19, 2006. He died on November 7, 2017 at the age of 84. Some of his better known spaghetti westerns or basically Euro westerns, and I'll post the entire list on Facebook and YouTube after we get done with this episode. But some of his better known westerns were Pirates of the Mississippi in 63, Massacre at Marble City in 64, Black Eagle of Santa Fe in 65, Rattler Kid in 67, Wanted Sabata in 70, Durango is Coming, Pay or Die in 1970, and Django Adios in 1971. Okay, now we're going to get into who are those guys and the Peverello brothers. Okay, first we're going to talk about, I always pronounce his name as Osiride. It's spelled Osiride, but watching a little podcast home film about him that's on YouTube, they pronounce his name Osiride, so that's how I'll pronounce it. Last name is Peverello, Pevarello. He was an Italian stuntman and character actor. He was born in Montefiani, Veneto, Italy on July 26, 1920. He was one of 19 children who were all part of a circus family. His father was at first a farmer who at some point learned to be a magician and began to travel the world with his wife, performing in circuses and sideshows. Osiride himself had his own circus that he sold to devote himself completely to the profession of an acrobat and stuntman for cinema and television. At one time, he was a member of the Italian Army and even a wrestler before making his screen debut in 1949's Il Mulino del Po. In English, that's The Mill of Po, directed by Alberto Lattuada and starring Jacques Cernus and Carla De Poggio. He would go on to have a 40-year career ending in 2003. He worked with Fellini, Rossi, Modugno, and Scaramouche. In all, he appeared as an actor in over 170 films and over 82 as a stuntman. Osiride may have appeared in more Euro westerns than any other actor. I have him listed in 61 westerns myself. Once you become familiar with his face, you will see him all the time playing saloon patrons, brawlers, gang members, and henchmen. He was the brother of actor stuntman Renzo Peverello. He was married and had 13 children, of which only 4 lived to adulthood. There's a 15-minute video on YouTube, as I mentioned, called 1966 Osira Day di Marcello Baldi that looked like a home movie. And I just watched this again last week, so it's still on there. It shows Osira Day, his wife, and 4 children having a meal outdoors. Their home at the time looked much like a gypsy circus wagon, of which he is very proud of. The home consists of 2 wagons, a larger one where the kitchen and the boys' room are located, a smaller one where he and his wife sleep. It was located close to the catacombs of Commedia in Rome and is parked in an open field next to a coffee bar. He doesn't own a car but rides a bicycle and spends his off time fishing in the Tiber River to bring home food for supper. It was in Italian, so I wasn't able to pick up much of the narration, but you're able to follow along very well. Osira Day died in Rome on December 15, 2016. He was 96 years old. Again, I'll post a list of his spaghetti westerns on YouTube and Facebook. His brother was named Renzo Peverello. He was the younger brother of Osira Day by 4 years, born in Santa Giustina, Colle, Italy, on August 18, 1924. He also was a stuntman, film, and TV actor who appeared in over 170 films. As an actor from his first appearance in Ben-Hur in 1959 until his final role in 1987. He's also credited with over 55 films as a stuntman. The brothers also often appeared together in many films, so if you see one, look carefully for the other to pop up. I also have him listed as being in over 60 spaghetti westerns. Renzo specialized in playing saloon patrons, brawlers, henchmen, soldiers, and Mexican bandits. Renzo died in Rome on February 14, 2015 at the age of 90. And again, I'll post his list of spaghetti westerns on Facebook and on YouTube. Okay, next we'll get into the film of the week, and it is the great Alive or Preferably Dead. I say that laughingly because it's really a stinker. Anyways, Alive or Preferably Dead was a 1969 Italian-Spanish co-production. The Italian title is Vivi Preferibilmente Morti. The Spanish titles are Vivos o Preferibilmente Muertos and Dios la cría y Ringo los mata. The English language titles are Alive or Preferably Dead, Sundance and the Kid, and Sundance Cassidy and Butch the Kid. It's directed by Arthur Pitt, whose real name is Amadeo Tessari. Story is by Annie Fliano. Screenplay is by Giorgio Salvioni and Duccio Tessari. Cinematography is by Cesar Elione and Manuel Rojas. Music is by Johnny Ferrio. There's a couple of songs in here. Monty and Ted, sung by the Wilder Brothers. December 24th is sung by I Cantori Moderni. And Yes Sir, sung by Lillian Terry. It runs 103 minutes. The cast consists of Monty Mulligan, or Sundance Cassidy, played by John Wade. In the English release, that's Juliana Gemma. Ted Mulligan, or Butch the Kid, is played by Robert Newman, who's actually Nino Benvenuti. Rosella, or Scarlett Scott, is played by Karen Blake, that's Sidney Rome. Barnes is played by Antonio Casas. James Badman Williams is played by Chris Huerta. Mr. Scott is played by George Rigau. And a couple of other noted names that you'll recognize in here is the photographer is actually played by Duccio Tessari, the director. And one of the train passengers is Rafael Albayazin, which we covered last week. The story goes, old Archie has died and leaves his 2 nephews, Monty, played by Juliana Gemma, and Ted Mulligan, played by Nino Benvenuti, a legacy of $300,000, which they can only collect as long as they live together for 6 months. Different in character and habits, Monty is a carefree pleasure seeker, while Ted is a rough lumberjack. The brothers do not get along at all, but are penniless, so they decide to form a plan to get the money. They kidnap Scarlett, played by Sidney Rome, the young daughter of the banker Mr. Scott, played by Jorge Rigaud. Ted and Monty demand a large sum for the ransom, but to their surprise, the girl's father seems little concerned to conclude the deal. He's pleased to be rid of his pervasive daughter. Forced to release the girl, the two brothers attempt to steal a cargo of gold, but the sudden appearance of a band of outlaws led by Bad Jim, played by Chris Huerta, who are also after the treasure, this causes them to take the side of the law. During the fight with the bandits, Ted falls into a river and is presumed dead, while Monty, mistaken for a selfless defender of the law, is hailed as a hero, and the same banker, Mr. Scott, gives him the hand of his daughter. Fortunately for Monty, Ted suddenly shows up safe and sound and helps him to avoid the embarrassing situation. This is an early comedy with some typical plots seen several times in the genre. Two brothers who don't get along are forced for one reason or another to band together. The Trinity films comes to mind. Another is Patience Has a Limit, We Don't. The frazzled father who's glad to get rid of his daughter and fails to pay the ransom. Rogues who join the side of the law to protect their own interests, not because they are enforcers of law and order. Sartana and Sarbatos characters come to mind. So we've seen it all before, we will see it in the future. Another film which highlights Gemma's acrobatic and gun handling skills, the typical extended fight scene, is another staple of this kind of film, and the buddy shows up at the end to save his friend from a marriage he's forced into. The film was released in the USA under the title Sundance Cassidy and Butch the Kid, and tries to cash in on the success of the Redford Newman film Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Gemma's character is named Sundance Cassidy, and he's billed as John Wade, while Ben Venuti is Butch the Kid and credited as Robert Newman, while Sidney Rome's character is given the alias Karen Blake. If you're a Gemma fan, you might possibly sit through it, otherwise it's boring and a juvenile comedy. There's action, but nothing really original. The score also gives the content away and not one of Ferrio's best. Even the main theme song by the Wilders Brothers is nothing to excite you. Actors profile: Monty Mulligan, played by Juliana Gemma. Gemma was born on September 2nd, 1938 in Rome and died in a car accident on October 1st, 2013 in Civitavecchia, Italy. He was 75. We covered him in his own special episode, number 41. Barnes is played by Antonio Casas. He was born Antonio Casas Barros on November 11th, 1911 in A Coruña, Galicia, Spain, and died on February 14th, 1982 in Madrid. He's probably best remembered as the Farmer Stevens in Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. We covered him in episode number 33. James Bad Jim Williams is played by Chris Huerta. He was born Crisanto Huerta Bieva on January 26, 1935 in Lisbon, Portugal, and died in Madrid, Spain on November 28, 2004. He was one of the most seen Spanish character actors of the genre. We covered him previously in episode number 98. Mr. Scott is played by Jorge Rigaud. He was born Pedro Jorge Rigato de la Seche on August 11, 1905 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and died from injuries suffered after being hit by a car while crossing a street in Madrid on January 17, 1984. He was 79. We covered him in episode number 33. Ted Mulligan is played by Nino Benvenuti. Giovanni Benvenuti was born in Isola di Istria, Slovenia, on April 26, 1938. He's an Italian national sports hero, as he was an Olympic welterweight boxing champion in the 1960 Summer Olympics. He was the world junior middleweight champion in 65 and 66, the world middleweight champion in 67, 68 to 70, member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1992, and the World Boxing Hall of Fame in 1993. He's only appeared in 3 films, and this is his only Western. Nino is still alive and well. He's been married twice and has 5 children. His second wife is model Miss Amelia, 1967, Nadia Betroella. She died on the 24th of this year at the age of 75. Remarkably, he's really good in this film and should have had a bigger film career. Last but not least, we have Rosella or Scarlett Scott, played by Sydney Rome. I thought forever that Sydney Rome was an alias and her real last name was not Rome, but that's incorrect. Her real last name is Rome. She was born in Akron, Ohio on March 17th, 1951. She is the great niece of author Zane Grey. Sydney is the sister of writer Lisa Ray Rome, born in 1955. She made her first film appearance in the 1969 British film Some Girls Do. She then appeared in Italian films, often playing the young, seemingly innocent American abroad. She then made forays into German film and television. Since the late 1990s, she has acted in Italian TV, films, and series. Rome appeared in 3 spaghetti westerns, the other 2 being They Call Me Amen in 1972 and Mexico in Flames in 1982. She also starred in her own 2008 documentary film, Sydney in Wonderland. At some point in her life, her face was disfigured in a car accident. So if you see recent pictures of her, she looks like she did a lot of Botox, but actually it's from the car accident. So now we'll move along to CD of the week. Okay, CD of the week, also LP of the week, covers Alive or Preferably Dead. It was first released as an LP, which I have, but was unable to find, under the title Vivi o Preferbilmente, done by composer Gianni Ferrio, and this was released in 1969 in Italy under the CAM label, number SAG 9023, has 18 tracks of music, listing time of 29 minutes and 38 seconds. Since no one likes the film, it only has a value of $5. Then it was released in 1992 on CD under the same title, released by CAM under CAM's label CSE 037. It's basically a duplicate of the LP, has 18 tracks of music and 29 minutes, 38 seconds of listening time, and again, valued at only $5. Then in 2013, it was released in Italy by Digit Movies under the same title. The number is CDDM232. It has 28 tracks of music, has a listening time of 48 minutes and 24 seconds, and it's valued at $17. Okay, now we'll move on to Autograph of the Week. Okay, Autograph of the Week by the great Woody Strode. Sorry, but I don't have an autograph photo of him. He was at the Hollywood Collector Show. I didn't know he was going to be there, so I would have brought a picture from one of his spaghetti westerns, but I did get his autograph. The great Woody Strode. This was late in life, not too long before he passed away, and I knew he was not feeling well because he didn't do anything but stare down and basically didn't talk to anybody. He just shook his head and smiled, signed autographs. Okay, now we'll go on to Book of the Week. Okay, I mentioned this book last week. I got my copy in the mail this week. It's Renato Casaro. He was a designer of posters, both American and Italian, mostly Italian, but he did a lot of American. In fact, I was surprised to see that he did the Rick Dalton posters from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, along with a lot of other ones. It's basically a coffee table book of posters. Here are some of the westerns that he did, pictures of, great artwork, full page posters. If you want to give someone an idea for a Christmas present, I'd highly recommend that one. It's a fantastic book. It has 409 pages, was published in 22, but just came out this year. So I highly recommend it. Okay, let's get into some posters from the Poster Addict. Okay, I've got to move the chair out of the way because I've got some big ones to show you. But 7 hours of gunfire. We'll start with the German ADMAT program. Talked about these before. There's no pictures. It's just the poster on the inside. Also have full-sized German poster. Crazy that they show Helga Sommerfeld as the main actress in it. Then we get into, let's see, this is a Spanish poster for 7 hours of gunfire. Let me grab it here. This is a big one. Except they call it 24 horas de fuego, not 7 hours, 24. Maybe it just seems like 24 hours when you're watching it. Then we have a German poster for Alive or Preferably Dead. And this is a scene from the movie, but doesn't stir your interest, that's for sure. Then I have the Italian window poster. Gemma and Benvenuti. Full-sized. Throw that out of the way. And then this. And there's no markings on this. I don't know where that one came from. So that's it for posters of the week. And now we'll wrap things up with the weekly news. Okay, actually nothing new this week. No one's passed away. There's been no DVD releases, no book releases, no CD releases. They'll probably come in the next week or so for the Christmas holiday season. But a couple things I wanted to go over. I asked a couple of weeks ago about Marina Cicagna because in one of the obits she was credited as producer for Once Upon a Time in the West, and yet I can find no relation to her being a producer on that. Her brother was credited, but not her. So I asked anyone to give me some help on this. And what I came up with, she died on November 4th, and she was, like I said, credited as producer for Once Upon a Time in the West. She was born on May 29th, 1934, to Count Cesare Cicagna Mozzoni and Countess Anna Maria Volpi di Musarata. She was the first woman in Europe and perhaps in the world as a film producer. She and her brother Giuseppe Bino Cicagna, and that's who was credited for the producer of Once Upon a Time in the West, were given some money by their mother, and they formed the Euro International Film Production Company in the 60s. Besides Once Upon a Time in the West, the company also produced Ace High with Eli Wallach, Terence Hill, and Bud Spencer, and Boot Hill with Spencer and Terence Hill. So thanks for that information I received. That clears that up. Also, I forgot to mention last week that we talked a couple of weeks ago about an auction in England, and among the auction items was Lee Van Cleef's hat from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The company that made this auction. It was called Prop Store. And this was auctioned off on November 9th, and it went for 137,500 pounds. Translated into dollars, that's $167,750. No, Jay and I didn't win it. We were off by about 167,749 bucks. Anyways, we're hoping that Quentin Tarantino purchased it, but ownership was not divulged. So that will conclude it for this week. Hope to see you down the road. Until then, this has been a Roberto Genesi production. And until I see you next time, adios, amigos.